Welcome to the John Cady podcast. I'm John Cady, U.S. Navy retired, former minister. Back when I was in high school in the late 1970s to early 1980s, there were two books by writer George Orwell that were required reading in our schools. The first one was 1984, which was a very dystopian novel about a world where everything was under total surveillance and that everything that you did or said was under the surveillance of Big Brother. The other book was Animal Farm. Animal Farm was written by Orwell to be an allegory of what happened in Soviet Russia. For those who know Russian history and understand the rise of communism in the early 20th century, the farmer represented the Romanov dynasty. Old Major was Lenin. Napoleon represented Joseph Stalin. Snowball was Leon Trotsky, Stalin's right-hand man, who was betrayed and assassinated by Stalin. And of course, there was Boxer, the faithful horse, who served the cause until he was no longer able, and then he was betrayed by being shipped off to the glue factory. The one voice of reason that observed the corruption from the outside in the book and in the original 1954 movie was Benjamin the donkey and faithful friend of Boxer. 2025 saw a reimagining of Animal Farm, and there were several differences that I observed. The most prominent one was the absence of Old Major. Old Major was the one who had the noble vision for the cause of the revolution of turning the farm over to the control of the animals, and that all animals were created equal. And it was Old Major whose vision was seen as noble, and over the course of time, as one read the book, and for those who saw the original 1954 animated film, how it devolved into the state that it was in when Napoleon took over. A new character was added to the movie named Lucky, and from what I've gathered and doing some research on this, Lucky was meant to represent a protagonist who was taken in and over time saw the corruption from the inside. Napoleon took Lucky in as Lucky's mentor and was grooming him to have a position of power among the pigs. So that part was consistent, that the pigs ran the farm. The focus, though, was not political but more corporate. Instead of socialism and communism, as in the original source material, the shift in the 2025 film was more on corporate greed. And while that makes it a broader and more universal film, it kind of dilutes in my opinion, it dilutes the original intent of showing how the promises of a utopian society can be easily corrupted. And in this case, the promise of a utopian farm was corrupted all in the name of advertising deals, endorsements, and big money, which Napoleon, of course, fell hook, line, and sinker with his cooperation with the humans. So what does that do? Well, the addition of Lucky, like I said, it creates a different emotional arc because Lucky sees it from within. And as I watched, and I can relate to this from my own experiences, I got to see how Napoleon gaslit Lucky and the other pigs, and by expansion, the rest of the animals on the farm, especially the sheep. The sheep just, bleated along, except for one who was trying to think for himself, but he got coerced into submission to go along. I did not miss that part of the movie. The most significant change, like I said, was on corporate greed as opposed to socialism. Do I think that the 2025 movie is as good as the book or the original 1954 movie? Not really. It was a bit more over the top, and it was more, There was a lot more goofy, cartoonish material. And I can see where that was probably done to appeal to a broader audience and to have younger viewers in the theaters and watching it at home on streaming media. But it also kind of dilutes a little bit the message of Animal Farm, and that was how a noble vision for change can easily be corrupted over time, and how people who are corrupted by power will seek out ways to remove any obstacle, real or imagined, who they might think is in the way. Case in point, even though the means were a little bit different in the two movies, it was faithful to Snowball being betrayed and murdered, and also Boxer being betrayed by Napoleon when, of course, in the old movie, a wagon shows up and carts Boxer on his way to the glue factory. In the 2025 movie, Boxer is hoisted up by a helicopter to a glue factory, but the sense of betrayal is still there. It's just in a fancier, glossier Hollywood production than the original. It's not a bad movie. There are some aspects of it that I think could have been a little bit more accurate to the source material. And I would strongly challenge anyone who does watch the 2025 movie to go back and read the book Animal Farm, and also go back and watch the movie that was made back in 1954, as it was a more faithful retelling of the Orwell story. This is John Cady. If you like what I've been sharing on these podcasts, hit like, hit subscribe, and I'm looking forward to you on the next one.